Hello, this is Donna Blevins, the big girl of poker and your MindShift coach. And this is Women's Poker Association Third Thursday Talks. And I'm really excited. And our special guest is going to help me with her name.
It is Aleeyah Jadavji.
And I asked her before, how do I say that? And she said I did a good job, so let me try it. Aleeyah Jadavji.
Perfect.
Perfect.
You nailed it.
Oh man, I love I love perfection. Actually, I have this perfection witch on my shoulder that usually bothers me.
Don't we all?
Oh, let me tell you, this is going to be so much fun because you and I have not been able to have a get acquainted call, and
yeah.
I just have seen so many neat things about you, and this is going to be all about you. This is going to be about you and what you can share with the women, because Women's Poker Association, our intention is to help unite women poker players worldwide. And I sure like that concept. How do you like that?
Yeah, I like it a lot. Obviously, I've been pretty vocal in some of the groups, and obviously we can touch on that after, but I have a lot of like female poker pro heroes in the community, and a lot of them kind of like, they're not super in the spotlight, but they definitely contribute lots, and I see them as, I guess you could kind of say, like an idol or mentor or whatever. But yeah, I think there's a lot to offer, and I think that, having a lot of women, more women join poker is super important, not just, to have women's events, but, to have women playing more poker overall. And I think that's a huge thing that I find super important. So.
And why do you find that important?
It's important, first of all, obviously, to grow the game, but, to see that there's only 5% of us, and that's probably near the top of the range of percentages, in the fields. It's, you just want to see more out there. And it's, people like us, that are involved in the community, that, play the game a lot, that work in the industry, we all know the potential and how much fun the game is. So to kind of, to feel like you have some sort of influence to maybe help grow it in that capacity and just get more women involved in general. It's thrilling. It's fun. It's, just to know that people, for example, there was a tournament last summer that I played in at the Orleans, hosted by Lips and WPA. And it was the one where they added the Platinum Pass. And I was sitting next to a lovely lady. She was on my left. And she's like, oh my gosh, I get so many chips for just $250 and I get to play all day. And she's like, I don't even care if I make the money. I get to play a full day of poker and, socialize. And so to see that kind of stuff happen in the community, obviously is something that I enjoy, and that, makes, parts of my job really thrilling. Because when I'm on the other side of the felt too, I could be covering a $200 tournament, and the person who wins it is just over the moon, because, winning a tournament obviously is a great feeling. So just, the small things that I see across the board, you just want to see more of that. And, because, I'm around a lot of pros, and some of them, rightfully so, are kind of jaded after a while because they're on the tour and, they're playing every single day almost. And they're just, you sometimes see the life get sucked out of them, and, they're playing such long days, and I'm not surprised, but it's kind of nice to see the refreshing side and, the new player side of it. So.
Yeah, I really think it is too, because getting some new blood in there makes it more fun. And you may not know, but I started out as a poker journalist, because I understand okay. You are a poker journalist. I understand as a poker journalist. And I have to ask and I'll tell you what year I was born. What year were you born?
86. I have no issues with disclosing that I'm 32. And a funny story about that is, I think it's happened to me twice in the last couple of years, where somebody asks how old I am, and I'm just like 25. And then they're like, oh yeah, that's just about the age I thought you were. And I'm like, wait, no, add 7 years to that. It's just funny because, sometimes I don't feel that way, and it's weird to think that you feel a certain age or whatever, but yeah, I feel like I owe a lot of that to the game too, because I'm just having a lot of fun doing what I do. So.
Well, the reason I ask you that is because I was born in 1949, And I will be 70 in April.
Well, you look great.
well, thank you. I mean, I don't feel like I'm 70. And the key is that I started out in the poker industry in 1996.
Wow. Yeah.
And that's why
I was 10. I was 10.
And I understand that you actually learned poker at 16?
I did. Yeah, I was in university, and I'm from Toronto, Ontario. And so that part of the country, the closest you can go to play poker is like Fallsview or Casino-Rama, which is, between an hour and a half away. And so the only thing that really exists are like underground games or games, within the colleges where, people play for, like small sit and goes and just for fun at parties and stuff. So I kind of learned with friends growing up at that age. And then when I was able to actually play legally, I kind of hopped the border from Ontario to Quebec to the next province over, where there's you can be a year younger, so 18 versus 19. And so I hopped the border at 18, and I just played my first legit hand of poker out there. But yeah, I grew up just learning with friends, and then I never really took it seriously until I think 2009. But I just played for fun tons. So.
Well, I'll let you know that I discovered poker in 1996 when my husband and I had a real estate company, and we were involved in it was so stressful. We were the management brokers for the Department of U.S. Veterans Affairs, and we took custody of properties the VA had acquired because of the foreclosure process. I took custody of 257 properties in one day.
Wow, crazy.
Yeah, and I was under so much stress. I worked 17 hours a day, 7 days a week, and I had no recreation. I had no life except for this. I loved what I did. It had a love-hate relationship. I loved what I did. I loved helping people buy homes, but the stress of managing all the contractors was awful. Wow. And the Seminoles put the card tables in their bingo halls in 1996, and they were playing 25-cent, 50-cent poker.
Wow.
And when the pot in cash games, when the pot got to $10, after the house had raked $2.50 above that,
wow, the
pot froze. And then, you're in a 25-cent, 50-cent game. Is anybody going to fold? No. So
yeah, for sure.
it was just a terrible game, but I said, I'm not going to play that type, but I would play in what they call mini tournaments there. Okay. And they were, you would buy in for $35 into 7-card stud, and they would play 35 hands.
Wow.
And the people that had, the 3 people that had the top chips would get a payout, like a tournament payout. And the first game that I played, I came in 4th, and I considered that I was a winner. And I want to let you know that poker saved my life, because it was sitting there at the table when I was worrying about what had happened and worrying about what would happen tomorrow and how I'd screwed up. I had this universal epiphany when I got smacked in the forehead and realized there was only one thing I had control over, and that was how to play the hand I was in. That's the only thing you ever had, was that hand. No cards are here yet. The ones that are gone. And it was life-changing. If it had, it went to that place of being in the zone, everything else seemed to calm. And it was an astonishing moment, because if it hadn't been for poker, I think I'd be dead from stress.
Yeah. I totally hear you. And, it's interesting hearing you say that, because I kind of have a similar mindset in that regard, because, in 2015, during the summer, I decided to quit my job and find something different in the fall. And I decided I was just going to play poker for the summer and travel a little bit. I had the experience and whatnot to find something else. I wasn't worried about finding a new job. And then I kind of, a friend of mine, Joanne Jost, who's from back home in Canada, in Edmonton, she's the poker manager, and kind of said to me, we have this social media, position, kind of like posting updates, but really low-key updates versus, the professional PokerNews ones, but just kind of like updating people, friendly, like, oh, so-and-so's on the final table, and just sort of for people to have sweats. And she thought I'd be really good at it because I found myself just sweating friends and just having fun watching the game and posting about it on my own personal page. So kind of started off that way. And then the next thing I knew, I had offers to work. They would call me the next day and just say, hey, we saw what you're doing. We want to do this for our tournament. So I ended up getting hired for the next 6 months, just basically 1 gig a month. And that was good enough for me where I could still play and have fun.
Sorry, it's
all good.
Hang on.
Okay.
This is Lupe, and Lupe, we are in the third Thursday talks.
Real quick and tell everybody hello, and that I'm really sorry I'm missing this talk tonight, but I can't wait for the recording because I love this woman you're interviewing.
Hi, Lupe.
Oh, and she sounds like she's got a cold.
Uh-oh.
I've been sick for like 10 days, so I'm kind of under the weather, but I still had to say something, so I thought I would call direct to the source.
That's amazing.
Okay, well, we love you. Would you like for me to give you a phone number to call in on, or are you?
I'll go look it up, but I just wanted to say hello to everybody and welcome Aleeyah to the WPA.
Thanks,
Excellent.
Lupe.
And she says thank you, and we'll get this. I'll get this up tomorrow. So.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thanks for calling in, Lupe.
All right, guys. Bye-bye.
See you later.
Bye-bye.
That's funny.
Okay.
Awesome.
It's Lupe. Yay.
She's great.
I'm going, yeah, that's Lupe. So it's wonderful that you were able to find a way of turning into an income, an employment, a way that you could generate income to make a transition into it.
It was crazy because I didn't think, so I thought, for that period, I thought, okay, I can do this for 6 months and then the new year will roll around and I'll just find something else. I was just kind of having fun, and I was like, 6 months off is no big deal for me. It was, I just thought it's fun. And then I met Drew Amato and Chris Torina on the Deep Stacks team because they run some events back home. And Drew was like, I think you'd be good at this. Like, why don't you work at the World Series? And I laughed. I literally laughed. I was like, no. I'm like, why would I ever do that? I don't have any experience. And he's like, no, trust me, I think this is a possibility. So I kind of went through some channels, got Rob Kirshen's email, who's my boss at WSOP, and sent him an email. And he's like, well, it's a little early because it was like November. And he said, we don't really start hiring or whatever till February. So he contacted me again in February about a quick interview. And then he flew me out to LA, which I thought was like amazing. I'm like, oh my God, I'm getting flown to LA. Like, this is so cool. I get to go to the bike and work a World Series poker event. I was so mesmerized. I was like, this is really cool. I get there and I see Maria Ho, I see Phil Locke, I see all these pros, and then Jamie Gold and Antonio Sfandiari get heads up for the main event ring. And it's like on Twitch and there's 6,000 viewers. And I'm just like, oh my God, like I was so nervous, and it was kind of surreal for me. I'm like, I want this. Like I want to do this. I want to travel to places. I want to go write about poker. I want to watch poker. I want to play poker. It was just, I just fell in love with it instantly when I went to the bike. And from then on, I kind of started getting more and more jobs, and I worked the series for WSOP, and I worked WPTs, and I work a whole series of things now, and kind of make my rounds, and it's just so cool. So when you talk about poker saving your life, I feel like I'm in a similar spot because it honestly, I don't even consider it work. Like, sure, the travel and being on my feet a lot is pretty tiring sometimes, but I think I balance life decent enough that I can recover and still have a good time. So.
Well, and we have so many things in common because once I discovered the poker and it's a great diversion. I mean, my husband, when I said, would you teach me how to play poker? I could see I mean, he was an excellent poker player, but he never played in Florida because there really wasn't any place for him to play in Florida.
I love Florida so much. I
Yeah,
love
now,
Florida so
yeah,
much.
now I mean, poker in Florida is awesome, and
Yeah.
you could see these, these gears turning. I mean, I know what he thought. He thought
Yeah.
in those days, he thought, it's a guy's game. But then
Yeah.
I saw the shift. I said this mind shift in the moment, and I could see him go from to, well, wait a minute. If she learns the game and she likes it, then maybe I'll get to play more.
I'll get to play more, yeah.
Yeah, and what happened is literally I made a transition from the real estate industry to poker because in a very short period of time I thought, how are the same people getting so many of the same people getting to the final table in these tournaments?
Yeah.
And I really want to find out. And I said, but in those days there was only one column for beginning poker players, and that was Jan Fisher's Poker 101 and Card Player. There was nothing else. And I said to my husband, we really needs to be, more for beginners. And he said to me, why don't you just hush up and write it?
Yeah.
And I thought, well, okay. So I was getting ready to send a query letter into Card Player to Linda Johnson.
Yeah.
And that was when Poker Digest launched, when Scotty Wynn won in 1998.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw the first issue of Poker Digest, and I thought, well, wouldn't it be a lot easier to be a big fish in a little sea than a little fish in a big sea? And so I sent the query letter to Poker Digest, and my husband had taken me to Tunica, Mississippi to the Horseshoe.
Oh, nice.
And loved the Horseshoe, and he to a real poker game. And I got a call from our service because we were on vacation, and the message was from Poker Digest. They had we've picked up your column, printing your first article, send 6 more. And I went, what? 6
Send 6 more. I love it.
I am a journalist. And so the first person that I came across, I said, would you please, tell me why you play poker? And, one of the pros that I came across, and he said, no, I'm not going to tell you my secrets. And it was a wonderful way to get started. But that's how I got started in the industry, was as a journalist. And so I've been a journalist for 21 years.
Great. That's awesome. Yeah, I'm actually transitioning this summer I'm not moving away from live updates during the year because I'm still going to travel for live reporting. But for the summer, I'm going to be doing editorial work. I don't know in what capacity yet. We're still figuring that out over the next month or so. But I should be doing something different this summer with the writing side. So I will be doing features and whatnot. So more to come on that, but it'll be my first summer doing that.
Oh, that is cool.
Yeah.
So if you're going to, let's say that you were going to write a book, what would you want that book to be?
Oh man, that's a great question. Honestly, I'm not really sure at this point, but I feel like, and I felt this way the last maybe 6 months or so, that I wanted to start vlogging and doing some stuff where, it's just the real side of, between life and poker, because I think that people maybe looking in think it's just all glamorous and people are just oh yeah, just printing money and living the life and traveling to exotic places and whatnot. But I think that people, come into it with unrealistic expectations. It's amazing. It's great to have freedom. There's also the side of real life, right, where people go through things, whether it's illness or, hardships in life and stuff like that. So I think that people seeing and just having that as a motivation, using it in a positive way where, people can relate to you as regular human beings and oh, this person's human, things happen in their life and this is how they deal with it. So I think that, because I've had a lot of people reach out to me, when I was going through, radiation treatments and, surgery and stuff like that, and just dealing with that stuff, reaching out to me and saying that, I'm a motivation to them. And so I feel like having a voice and having some of that experience can be used in a positive way. So if you were, to answer your question, if I were to write a book, I want to talk about, trying to be positive and not, just make it all about, how to come to terms with stuff in life and how to deal with things and take it, day by day and, less stress. And, I used to be someone who worried about stuff a lot. I do a lot less of that now, just because after going through the things I've been through the last, year or so, I know what's important and what's not. So I'd like to be a positive influence in people's lives is the short answer.
So I'm hearing that you want to bring the life balance in that really comes into play in poker.
Yeah, that's definitely a big part of it, because I think that, people think that, people go and play poker and then they just go to the beach and then just go shopping and it's not all about that. Everyone's human. Everyone has things that go on in life. And so, yes, balance is such a huge thing. And I feel like I've done a lot better in that department the last year. And that plus positivity, I think that, I give Phil Hellmuth a lot of crap sometimes on Twitter because of some of the things he posts, but he honestly has something going with the positivity thing. And it's, I truly believe in a lot of that stuff is, positive mindset and surrounding yourself with positive people. And, I hear a lot of bad beats and hand histories that are just people complaining and sure, I'll listen to it. But I think dwelling on negative stuff is just it's not always a good thing to do. So yeah, I want to balance, and positivity is definitely important to me. So.
And you said that Helmuth, giving a lot of crap to Helmuth. I mean, let me tell you, when he came out with the book Positivity, I have to admit, I'm going, what?
Yeah.
Because he was.
I haven't even read it.
Me either.
Yeah.
And my book, MindShift on Demand, by the way, MindShift on Demand, and it's about shifting your mindset. It's about positive thoughts, because we are a product of our thoughts. Mm. Our body is the vehicle, our mind is the driver, and we have a choice with how we look at whatever's going on. I mean, we have little control over what's around us, but what we do have control over is how we act and how we become proactive rather than reactive.
Mm-hmm. I like that as well, because I won't go into too much detail, but there was some comments that I saw on some of the women's forums today. There's obviously been a bunch of drama the last several months or whatever.
I saw that too.
Yeah, I made a comment where I said, and I'm guilty of this too. It's kind of it's easy to react in the moment, but a big part of everyday life and interaction is the way we react and handle ourselves in situations is a reflection on one's character. And I think that's sure, everyone has tempers and emotions and stuff like that, but at the end of the day, if someone's consistently attacking and being negative and stuff, I would like to be the person that says look, this is kind of how you come across, and it's not something that I'm okay with. And I'm okay with saying that, because I think a lot of people don't realize how they might come across. And sometimes people just need someone to say that to them in order to change, or to realize wow, I'm not having the effect that I want on people, or, I don't feel good about the things that I'm saying. So I think that that's something that's huge as well, in interactions. But Phil Hellmuth is kind of I bug him sometimes where I'm just I don't, try to be a bit more humble or whatever else, because he was going on about charities. And it's I think that people with such big voices like that, I'm not saying they owe us something, but they're people, we look up to people like that. And I think it's just important to have a bit of, professional conduct in those areas. But
yeah, I agree 100%. One of I have this rule, by the way. You're talking about people wanting to tell you their bad beat stories. Mm. My husband created this rule 21 years ago about bad beat stories. And, basically most houses, a green chip is $25. Yeah. And so people would come up and say, well, let me tell you my bad beat. And he'd say, that's just fine. He said, it'll be one green chip. You want me to listen to a bad beat story? Pay me to listen to a bad beat story.
That's great.
And they'd go, what? And I'm going, I'm not going to focus on this issue with you, because when people focus on the bad beats, they get more of the same.
Right.
And I know that's a fact. So tell me what you would consider your greatest strength in the game.
In the game, it's definitely not bluffing, which is funny because I play a lot of poker and a lot of cash games in Calgary and Edmonton, Alberta, back home. And I feel like, and I tell people this all the time, we've been spoiled with the poker because it's just people just throwing money away. I'm not even kidding. It's I played standard ABC with very little bluffing in my game for like, I don't know, the last 5 years maybe, and it's really worked for me. I never need to bluff. And then I started playing a lot more in like Vegas and LA and Florida, and I kind of realized I'm like, I need to add that into my game because I'm playing with better players and different players. And so it's definitely not bluffing, but I think I don't know, extracting value is something I've gotten good at. And it's only because I know that in the place that I play, there's a lot of people that don't like to fold. So just extracting value and like bet sizing and stuff, I've gotten a lot better at. And I'd say I'm pretty decent at it now. But I've been working on like hand reading and stuff like that. And I got a coach before I went to the Bahamas to play in the PSBC. And so I've been getting much better at hand reading. So I'd say a good combination of extracting value from my opponents as a cash game player, and that's helped me in tournaments too. So
excellent.
Yeah.
And if actually you actually led out with it, because I always, looking at my own game, I'll ask myself these questions periodically. It's what is your greatest strength right now, and what is your biggest challenge? And I think you're saying the bluffing issue is one thing that you wanted to focus on. Is that the part that you would like to focus on improving?
Yeah, it's definitely, yeah. I mean, the bluffing side is just because I think that I also don't use my image enough. And, as you, obviously, I'm sure being a woman in poker, it's, I feel like we can use that to our advantage because people think that we're just like super tight and, that we just play aces all the time and whatever else. So I think that using our image as women in poker is super important. And then, on the bluffing side of it, I think my biggest leak before was that I didn't know much about timing for bluffs. And my coach, Ryan LaPlante, actually helped me with that quite a bit. He was basically, talking about hand ranges and stack depths and just knowing board textures and knowing when it's my advantage versus my opponent's advantage on a board. And that actually helped me a lot because I managed to pull off some pretty nice bluffs when I was playing in the Bahamas, which is funny enough because you'd think that playing in the biggest tournament of my life that I'd probably not try to bluff as much, but I did the opposite, and it actually worked really well for me because I was card dead for a really good chunk of day one, and I gained my chips in spots through bluffing. So definitely I'm realizing now that it's such a big component of the game and I need to add more of it. And so, yeah, definitely.
So what do you think you would suggest women poker players might focus on to improve their game? If you're seeing overall what may be leaks or where you would suggest that they focus?
Yeah, I think, and that's a great question. It's something that I thought about too in my coaching sessions, and what Ryan told me as well is that I think that sure, you have to think about the cards that are in your hand, but you also have to play the player and focus on the board too. You can't just, sit there and say, oh, well, I don't have anything on that board, so I just have to fold. I think that not focusing too much on your hand, but also your opponent's hand and what your opponent can have, and just thinking along those lines, and the board textures that, especially defending the big blind, and there are certain boards that are going to be in favor of the person who raised versus the person who defends the big blind. So I think that's important. But so, I mean, there's so much free material and good material out there. And especially on Twitch too, like if you watch some of these really great streamers, they talk about their thought process, and there's a lot of free content out there. So I think that women definitely would benefit from studying, and there's so many good tools out there. Raise Your Edge. There's Upswing. There is the other one, Reddit Once. So, you know, I think there's a lot of content out there. It's really definitely lucrative to try to invest in some of that, but a lot of it's free, and I think that's a good start in going over hand histories.
Yeah, I think that's really good. And I think, yes, having free things is important. But one of the things I have learned over the years about whatever I wanted to learn is that I really needed to pay for it. If I didn't pay for it, I valued what I spent. And it doesn't have to be a lot, but I think people really need to pay for things. You know, it needs to cost something in order for them to value it. Do you agree with that?
I agree. I think, definitely. I mean, I think knowing, you know, for example, I paid $50 for this, I better make the most of it. I think that, you know, having that mindset's definitely really good. I think that also, for example, in the terms of paying for it, if you go and watch some streamers, you can subscribe to them. Like if you can even pay $4.99 and subscribe, you know, per month, and subscribe to these streamers who are actually doing a great job with breaking down their thought process. Like Lex Feltos is really good. You know, Party Poker is just starting to sign a bunch of really powerful players, you know, all in Pav and Pat Tardif and you know, those guys who are just really good at explaining and breaking down hands. And I think that's really important, a really important learning tool. But yeah, I agree, you know, paying for it and knowing that I want to get the most, you know, out of my money that I put into this is definitely important.
What do you think the greatest non-financial reward poker has brought to your life?
Non-financial. I have to say, it actually has nothing to do with the game. It has to do with the people I've met, and actually see that one of my best friends, Joy, is in the chat. I have met some really amazing people through this game, and people that I know that are going to be in my life for life. You know, it's just one of those things where I feel like the relationships that you build on the felt, you know, transition into real life, and there's some really, really good people that I've met. So that's the biggest thing that I have, you know, earned non-financial wise in my life, and I'm really grateful for it. So.
Yeah, it's wonderful. It's been huge for me as well. The people, it's all about the people. And I just want to mention to everyone, we now have an audience, which is exciting. Yeah, we have almost a dozen people have said, "Where are they? Where are they?" And I was able to get it over to Lupe, and apparently she got it out. I want everyone to put any questions that you have into the chat room, please. And before we finish, I'll ask the question. So if you have something you'd like to ask, and hi everyone. Yes. Just hi to everyone. So how do you prepare for poker? How do you prepare for the game, to play?
So, I mean, I play mostly cash games, but what I did in the Bahamas when I played the PSBC was I just made sure I turned in early. For example, like, you know, I mean, sleep is so important. Just having that clear mind is such a huge, you know, it makes such a huge difference, because sitting at the table, it's hard to sit there and, you know, so, you know, not socialize. I mean, you know, the thing is I am so involved in the community that I know so many people. And so when I sit down, it's kind of like I'm always saying hello to people or chatting with people. So it's kind of hard to focus when you first sit down and just kind of focus on the game and whatever else. So being well rested is really important in that regard. You know, just making sure that I've eaten, because I don't generally eat while I play tournaments. During the day, I'll just have like a quick snack on break or whatever. But there's that. I don't do anything specific in terms of like listening to podcasts or whatever else. I just I feel like if I'm focusing too much on the hand histories and the studying that I just did with my coach, that I'm thinking about those hands and I'm not putting enough effort and thought into the hands that are going on at the moment. So I just try to not do any studying or whatever it is the night before, unless it's, for a day 2 where I'm studying hand ranges for the number of big blinds. So for example, I made day 2 with 30 big blinds, and I was studying hand ranges for different positions going into day 2 based on what my opponent's stacks were. So that's the only thing that I really did. But aside from that, just making sure I'm rested and hydrated and fed.
Yeah, hydration is so important. I think.
Yeah.
And please, be easy on the caffeine. I know that people are doing those heavy caffeinated drinks, and they're so bad for you. Yeah. They're really, really hard on your body for sure. Do you play women's tournaments different than mixed tournaments?
Yeah. So I guess you're asking Jules, women's tournament, like all women's tournaments versus open events. Yeah. I sometimes I do. And the reason for that is, I guess when I'm in a women's tournament, I don't know, like I feel like women are there's just like this bond that women feel like they have when they sit down at a table. And so when you're at a table full of women, everyone's just kind of like a bit friendlier. And I feel like there's a lot less bluffing and betting. I don't know if that's just like because I haven't played that many women's tournaments. I've only played maybe a handful of them, but I feel like it's just a different dynamic because everyone's kind of, like for example, I busted and everyone hugged me, whereas you're at a tournament, an open event, it's just like, oh, good game, see you later, so I love the dynamic of playing a women's tournament, but I feel like you have to just sort of adjust because the playing style is going to be a little bit different. I feel like, as I said, women feel like they have a bond together, and maybe they might not play as hard against you or whatnot, so it's kind of hard to adjust, I find, a little bit, but it takes a couple levels and then you kind of get into it, and the tournament, everyone starts getting comfortable, and it doesn't feel any different after that. But it's weird to say that, but that was my experience, from the few tournaments that I have played.
And you're absolutely correct.
Mm-hmm.
It is that there is sometimes I don't want to play softness,
mm-hmm.
but I think women sometimes hold back when they're against other women.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to say to women is, yes, love each other, but when you're at the table, by golly, bring your game on. Yeah. I really want to see women poker players step up and really get their power, take the risks, open up your game.
Yeah. I mean, I'd say like, also on the opposite side is like, if you get bluffed or someone's betting into you like all 3 streets, don't take it personally. It's just it's one of those things where it's kind of awkward for me because, as I said, I know so many people in poker and I'm playing against friends so often that it's really awkward for me. So I just have a rule. I'm like, I tell people beforehand, I'm like, look, I don't soft play. I can't do it. It's one of those things where sure, like it's soft play is considered a form of collusion, and I'm not going to be as aggressive and say that like people are colluding when they soft play, because the intent is not to collude with the other person. But for me, it's just at the end of the day, it's just so minus EV to like, you know what I mean? Like I have so many friends in the game. I'm like, I just can't soft play. I'm just going to play my hands. So don't be offended. Don't be upset if I bet 3 streets and you feel like you have to call and I beat you. Like it's just part of the game. And I've found people get pretty emotional and upset at the tables when you're like, why would you bet? Like, I was going to check that to you and whatever else. And I'm like, that's not how I play. That's not how you should play. I think that, taking that side of the emotion out of it is important because in theory, in a perfect world, we play the same against everyone, but there's always going to be some sort of, you're going to have like some sort of emotional attachment to certain people and whatnot. So it's the same on the opposite, where if you like, really dislike somebody and they're at the table, sometimes you feel like, oh, I want to beat them. I want to take all their chips. And like, so making it personal in that regard can hurt you too. But yeah, I think overall it's just good to keep the same mindset. Like my best friend Joy, just like we were playing a cash game at Edmonton and she just like bluffed the shit out of all of us, like the whole table. And she showed it and she's like, oh, here, look, I got nothing. Like, it was just the funniest thing ever. I was stunned because I was like, oh man. I was like, I didn't know you had that in you. And she's just like, yep. She's like, that's the only way I can win the hand. And it's so true because, you know, it doesn't matter if it's your friend or your enemy in the pot. If that's the only way you can win the hand, then go for it, you know? And you can't be upset at someone for trying. So I think that's a big thing that I notice in women's tournaments too, where people just get upset, like, oh, they just keep raising my blinds or they keep betting into me. And, you know, I don't understand. They're just coming after me. And it's like, no, it has nothing to do with that. You know, it's just part of the game. So, yeah.
When my husband started teaching me how to play poker in 1996, we had a deal.
Yeah.
And that was, he would never soft play me.
I like it.
That was absolutely our agreement. He would never, ever soft play me.
Yeah.
And, you know, that was one of the things that I think helped me have a stronger game from the beginning, is because of that. And then he stopped wanting to play with me. So that
I love it. Success.
Well, you know, it's not good to be at the same table, but we were playing in an area in Florida before the game really came here, and there would be like a home game, and you know, that would be one place to go. And so we'd go, well, are we going to be at the table at the same time? It's not a good idea.
Yeah,
it's not really a good idea. Not a good idea. But if we were there, you know, I'm going to play like he's a stranger, and that was the best way to do it.
I like it.
And I want to remind everyone to put your questions in, and let's see here. How good are you at following your own advice?
Pretty bad. It's just like, I mean, I wouldn't say I'm bad, but like, I feel like I give way, way better advice than I do taking my own advice. And I feel like that's probably stems from, you know, I was talking with my friend Jess about this, I think it was a couple days ago, where like, I definitely put other people ahead of myself quite often. But I tell other people, I'm like, you got to do what's best for you. And then I'm just like doing the opposite. It's just kind of how I was raised. And one of those things where, you know, if we're in a certain situation, I can't think of an example right now, but like, I just, you know, when I have friends and family, I'm always thinking about them before myself. And that's probably harmful in some situations, but it's just kind of how I was raised. So yeah, definitely better at giving advice than taking it.
I think it's really important. I'm glad you brought that up, because thinking about friends and family, I think it's really important to love your family, but you need to disconnect from them when you're in the game.
Yeah.
You literally need to disconnect from them. Turn off your phone, for goodness sakes.
Yeah, I'm so guilty of that. I'm just glued to my phone all the time. And it kind of comes with like the nature of my job and then also my life, because kind of, you know, my job and my life crosses over so often, and I play so much poker now that like, you know, I was traveling lots, you know, maybe a year ago, and now I'm still doing a lot of traveling, but less than before, because I've been focusing on playing more. So I'm like, you know, 2/3 of my time is spent playing and studying, and then the rest of it, you know, whether it's online or live, and then the rest of it is, you know, with family and just traveling for work. But yeah, it's one of those things where I have a really hard time. And actually, I was telling my friends Joy and Jamie about this, and I said, like, guys, how about we try to employ this when we're eating? And our friend Mike, who is like hates it about us, where he's like, guys, like, can you just put your phone away for an hour so we can play this board game or whatever else it is? And we're always just like you know, would have the phone down and just like, let me just check this one, just check if I have any messages, you know. It's just so addictive. And so we're trying to employ this rule where if we're eating, we put our phones down, and we're starting there. So we're going to start with the eating, you know, whether it's dinner, coffee or whatever. And then, you know, from after that, hopefully it just gets ingrained in a bit more of a habit, and especially at the poker table, because, you know, you're not focused fully on the actions and tendencies of your opponents and stuff like that. So
yeah, it's really critical, and I see so many people hurting themselves because of that, and we become addicted to the phone. The phone is addictive. So
for sure.
Let's see, what's your favorite hand out of position and why?
My favorite hand out of position. That's an interesting question. So my favorite hand of all time is Deuce 6 of clubs, and I consider it my roadie just because I won 4 enormous pots with it in 1 month. I made quads 3 times, and then I made a straight flush with it once, all in the span of 1 month. So it's just my favorite hand to play. Out of position, I would say like middling cards, and the reason for that is because like when people are raising and they're in position, a lot of times they're going to have like big pairs, suited Broadway cards and stuff like that. And when your opponents have that, and the board comes like 5, 6, 7, you just like in such a much better position to be able to bluff. And if you have like blockers and stuff like that, even if you have only a small piece of it, you can really put pressure on your opponents, because when people are raising, they're raising with really strong hands for the most part, especially if you're playing in a women's tournament, and like a lot more lower buy-ins. Basically that they're going to have strong holdings. So if you've got middling cards and the board comes off even something close to what you're playing, you can really bluff and put pressure on people in those spots. So I really like playing with those hands and do 6 of spades, or do 6 of clubs, sorry.
Cool. Well, the Platinum Pass Adventure, that was where PokerStars awarded you a $30,000 package, as I recall.
Yes.
That was the $25,000 entry into PokerStars Player No Limit Hold'em Championship, and then 6-night accommodations at the Atlantis Resort, and then $2,000 in travel money.
Yeah.
What a great deal. So tell us, what was your best memory of that adventure?
Yeah, thanks, Sherry. I honestly, the first thing that comes to mind there's 2 things I'd say that's tied for the top. The first is I pulled off probably the biggest bluff of my life. It was against a pro, and my table was full of pros. I had like Rainer Kempe on my left. I had Davide Kitai, a French pro, and the rest of them were all American and European pros. I was the only amateur at the table. I was the only Platinum Pass winner, and so I knew I was the spot at the table, so I started to try to use my image better. So the hand real quick was I opened with ace queen in early position. It was like the 3rd or 4th level of the tournament. Opened with ace queen with ace of hearts, and I got called from the cutoff, and the flop came, what was it? It was like 2, 3, 5, I think it was, or 2. Yeah, it was just like a 6 high board or something like that. And there was 2 hearts. The turn was, I bet a 3rd pot. Amit called. The turn was a black 5, so paired the board. I bet half pot this time. He called again. And at this point, the history was that he was basically, him and all the other players were, if there was like, an obvious draw that came in, they would bet. They would all race every single one of my blinds. And so the 10 of hearts hits the river, which brings in a flush. I decide to check because I think that he's betting 100% of the time in this spot. So sure enough, he bets a 3rd pot, which was a 5,100, and I just check raised to 18,000, and he snap folded, and I had the ace of hearts blocker, and like it seems like it's a spot where you should be bluffing for like a lot of pros, but for me it was super scary because it was like half my stack. So it was super memorable for me because first of all, I'm proud that I got to bluff a pro, and I got to play at a really tough table and held my own. But the second was playing with Maria Ho for a very brief time at the secondary feature table. And I tell this story to everyone because I think it's super awesome. She busts near the end of the day on day 1. And she packs up her things, and somebody who busts a $25,000 tournament, whether you're Phil Hellmuth or you're, an amateur, it's going to feel bad, it doesn't matter how rich you are. And Maria Ho busts and comes up to me and says, you're doing great. Your table presence is amazing. Good luck. Keep going. She's like, do your best. And so to hear that from like a pro, an ambassador, somebody who just busted the tournament for $25,000, probably not in the greatest mood, is thinking about me and not herself. She came up to me and, she could have just walked away and sent me a message later or whatever else. But that was just really memorable for me because as somebody who was nervous to be there in the first place and playing in a 25K, to have somebody like Maria Ho take time out of her day and to do that and say that to me was awesome, because I think that, the ambassadors in the game are super important to us and keeping the game alive. And I think that Maria is a really great ambassador. So it was super memorable for me, and I was pretty impressed and proud, to have her representing poker, but also women in poker. So.
Now that's wonderful, and
Mm-hmm.
I think that you were talking about you wanted to start blogging, and I think that this type of story, these type, to pick one of them and
Mm-hmm.
do a blog about that,
Yeah.
450, 500 word blog post, and that's the kind of journal that you want to do. When I have done my journaling with biggirlpoker.com, it's really been good for my game.
Yeah.
And I need to get back to updating that. And thank you so
Nice.
much for reminding me of that. One
For sure.
last question we have here from Lenore. How do you combat when the men at the table constantly try to tell you how to play?
Yeah, that's a great question. I feel like I'm fortunate that I haven't had that happen too often to me, and the only reason for that I think is because I'm just like I know everyone in the community for the most part where I play. But interestingly enough, I had an incident actually in Florida just on my last day. It wasn't really a big deal, but I made an ace high call on a board that like the turn, it was checked on the flop, and the turn brought both a flush and a straight draw. And the guy just like paused on the turn and thought about it and then bet. And I looked at the guy who initially raised, and he looked like he was folding. And I had ace six, which was ace high, on a king high board. And I just decided that he was on a draw, like jack 10, flush draw, possibly even 6-7. And so I called, and the river was a black 3. So like nothing came in, and he just ends up checking the river. So I check it back because I think I have showdown value, and he shows 6-7 offsuit, and my read was correct. And so I show ace 6, and the whole table just like, what? Why would you ever call that? And this one guy's just like, are you serious? Ace 6? You thought ace 6 was good? And like, it just get berated for making the correct call and trying to tell me that like, oh, I'm just losing money in the long run in that spot or whatever. And I just kind of just didn't say anything. And sure, I'm all for saying something, in a lot of spots, as a lot of women in this chat know. I've spoken up in some important discussions the last couple months, but sometimes in those spots, if people had kept going, I would have stepped in and said something, but he kind of just stopped after a couple minutes. And I think a lot of it's frustration. It doesn't make it okay. But on the same token, like, I think you just got to take that as a compliment. You're just like, yeah, I just made it a boss ace I call. Sorry. It wasn't like a massive pot or anything, but you kind of have to just be proud in that moment where you're just like, wait, that was a solid move. It was a good play. He's pissed because I caught him, bluffing, and just take it as a compliment. It's just one of those things where, if it happens often, you got to speak up for sure. And hopefully I would hope that there's people at the table who will back you up. But take it in stride, take it as a compliment. And hopefully they'll just frustratedly like dump off more money to you. It's just, it's not easy for sure to deal with a lot of things at the table, but hopefully you can, take it positively and just say, look, I just made an awesome move. He's mad about it. He probably thinks he can push the table around and get away with it, compliment. So. Yeah.
Oh, I consider it an absolute compliment. Somebody says that and they're asking me questions like that, I'll smile at them and say, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. For sure. That's exactly what we should do.
So what takeaway would you, anything you'd like to leave today and that you want everyone to remember or to think about?
Yeah. The first thing honestly that comes to mind is, just given a lot of the stuff that's been happening in the women's poker world, a lot of people, there was a new, member of the group today that kind of said, like, I'm scared to say anything because I don't want to get enemies or whatever. I think it's just, sure, it sucks, and you feel like if you speak up about something and people disagree that there might be like the mob mentality or something. But at the end of the day, I think you have to talk about and express yourself. If you think something is right, if you believe in something, if you feel like you want to stand up for yourself, somebody else, or even the game, if something happens to you at the table, speak up. Like, don't be afraid to speak up. There are a lot of people that will go to bat for you. I think it's important to you shouldn't have to silence yourself because you're scared that someone's going to not agree with you. You're always going to have people that disagree with you. There's always going to be people that, if you make enemies, it doesn't matter. Stuff's going to happen. It just means those people should not be in your life. So if you have something to talk about, you want to speak up about something, speak your mind, do it respectfully. You gotta, sure, it's easy to just be like, yeah, let's go. I don't give a crap. This is how I feel. You gotta have a bit of tact to it, and just like, just sort of speak your mind, but do it respectfully. And just remember that people are watching and listening, and how you act in situations it's just a reflection on yourself. And I think having respect for people in the game and the game itself is super important. So just keep going by what you believe in, doing what you feel is right. And if you feel strongly about something, stick to it.
You're absolutely a doll. Now, say your name again for me.
Aleeyah Jadavji.
That. Leah, you have been absolutely fantastic.
Thank you.
And I want to thank you for coming on and sharing your wisdom with us. And this is, people are going to appreciate this. I want you to know how much your integrity is. And we're getting the thank you, love your integrity, thank you.
Guys.
And something that you are the epitome of what I want to see in the poker industry, someone who has value and integrity. And thank you so much for being on with us.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
This is Donna Blevins, the big girl of poker. I am your MindShift coach, and I want you to pass around, tell people about Women's Poker Association. Ask them to join, bring more women in, and pass the word, because our goal is to unite women. Unite women poker players worldwide. We love you. Take care, and we'll see you all next month. Bye-bye.